Hello class, this is my informative speech, and today we're going to be going over the impact of modern media on modern presidential elections and basic politics. We're going to be going over how TV and other popular media formats has really impacted how us as voters view political elections and presidential campaigns. Showing how the modern media can basically be this tool to aid political candidates, but it can also scrutinize and bring them down, and also how we've become so interconnected with our own public officials. Did you guys know that the first public broadcasted presidential debate was actually on CBS all the way back in the 1960s, the infamous Nixon versus Kennedy in 1960. This is coming from Harrington and Chalasani. It's my source. And no, I think I do consider myself a person that is very well versed in this topic. I did quite a decent amount of research for this topic for today's speech, and I did take a class for this exact purpose of analyzing the modern presidency and everything and all of that. The class is called Political Science 5. But enough about that. Let's get into the speech. I'd like to discuss the historical impacts of television on the modern presidency. Television was a really revolutionary medium for politics, especially in the 1960s, because according to Elon University, historically about 8,000 U.S. households had television sets in 1946. 45.7 million had them by 1960. It really goes to show how much of a growing medium television is in America. It really explodes upwards. People are able to get information and entertainment on a whole entire new scale, and this really applies to politics as well, especially in the 1960 political debate, because it's the first televised political debate. It's the first time voters are really able to see their own choices, their own presidential candidates, live in person, debating each other and seeing how they're able to really handle the pressures of being in a political debate and everything. People are basically start getting these perceptions of judging political candidates on personality. You see a cult of personality growing around these figures. Not to say it wasn't already present, but people start to judge certain candidates based on looks, which really goes into the fact that social scientists do cite there are certain findings that citizens who listened to the Kennedy-Nixon debate on radio judged that Nixon was the winner. Those who watched it on television found that Kennedy was the winner, meaning that public presentation played a major role, seeing how these presidents interacted. Kennedy was this more likable, younger, more charming candidate, instead of Nixon being this older candidate. Voter bases valued the younger candidate overall. And, presidential contenders sought to use television to gain sort of position in the spotlight. This comes from the Miller Center. We see that televised politics, especially in the 1960s, creates a sense of human emotion in candidates. Obviously, you're able to witness their own debating skills and expressions, and it really changes public perception, how we view our own political candidates. I also want to discuss how political candidates can be picked apart and scrutinized by modern television and media. Modern broadcast media has really become controversial. You see how it can scrutinize and pick apart certain candidates and negative aspects of their policy and their public perception. I'd like to go over the case of Howard Dean, who participated in the 2004 presidential election, who had a very infamous viralized moment, that is the Dean Scream. It was basically when the Dean Scream occurred when after he was done with his presidential election, he was kind of considered the front runner despite conservative attempts to depict his campaign as basically being a left-wing freak. He finished third in the Iowa caucus. I got this quote from Sullivan. His most pivotal moment comes with the Dean's Cream. It's basically viralized in the internet, and he's basically ridiculed throughout the political community, showing how the internet can be a tool to gauge your own constituents being your own voter base, but it can also basically demonize yourself. You need a PR team for every single moment, it seems. This moment was basically viralized, talked to everyone on late night comedy shows and everything. It's basically just thrown apart and changed. It's basically lost in internet history. Basically changed his reputation forever, and that's not something you want. Now, I'd like to move on more towards how the 24-hour news cycle has really impacted the modern presidency, and how we see our own presidential candidates, and politics overall as a whole. With the advent of modern media and television as a whole, we've become aware that we can basically access and see what we're doing, what our presidents are doing, what legislation they're putting into office, and such things like that. We're bridging the gap even more with things such as social media. These 24-hour news channels, obviously like CNN, C-SPAN, MSNBC, and Fox, they've increased the number of outlets that the presidents have to basically shape their message and communicate to voters. No longer are the days where presidents have this basically sense of privacy where they're able to just sit back, just write legislation without having the public eye everywhere. Now there's always cameras recording them, and any inconsequential issue is basically thrown out onto the internet and viralized. This is why author David Greenberg defines the role of media as a growing appetite for scandal, the faster speed of news, the deepening of political partisanship, and the steep spike in kind of gossipy insider commentary that goes by the name of punditry. We've become so interconnected. Everybody wants to look for scandal. Everybody wants to analyze and nitpick every single little action that these political candidates do for controversy. And I think that's really an issue, and media plays a part in being positive and negative tool in politics. In summary, I think that the ever-evolving forms of modern media, such as television, have been a great tool, but have overall changed politics forever. In this speech, obviously I've gone over several key points, such as the impact of television, and how it has become bad and good.